Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be exploring something that I think is on a lot of people's minds these days, and that's social media's impact on young people,
Yeah.
specifically those 17 and under.
Right.
We've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one, research articles,
hmm
and even Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, which really digs deep into this whole issue.
It's a fascinating read. Yeah.
And honestly, some of the things we found were pretty startling,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to the potential consequences for, mental health and development.
Yeah.
So buckle up because this is going to be a deep one.
You know what's really striking to me is that this isn't just about kids spending too much time on screens.
Right.
It's like we're talking about a whole new landscape for childhood and adolescence.
Yeah,
One that's fundamentally different from what we experienced growing up.
totally. Like we all had our awkward phases and teenage dramas, but this is like a whole new level of pressure and anxiety.
Excellent.
One of the things that really jumped out at me was this sharp rise in mental health issues among young people since around 2010.
Right.
And the anxious generation cites a 51% increase
Oh, wow.
in major depressive episodes just between 2009 and 2019.
That's huge.
That's massive in just a decade.
Yeah. And Haidt makes a pretty compelling argument that this isn't just a coincidence.
Right.
He directly links this surge in mental health problems to the rise of smartphones and social media.
Okay.
During the same period, and there's a ton of research to back this up
Yeah.
from, the CDC Pew Research,
Yeah.
all showing a pretty clear connection between heavy social media use and negative mental health outcomes.
But is it really just the technology itself? Or is there something more going on here? Like, is it how we're parenting in the digital age?
Yeah, well, Haidt gets into this really interesting concept in his book called safetyism.
Yeah.
It's the idea that by trying to protect kids from every little bump and bruise, we may actually be making them more vulnerable in the long run. It's like we're not giving them the space to develop resilience and coping skills.
Okay, so it's like building a house of cards.
Yeah,
It might look impressive, but the slightest breeze can knock it down.
exactly. Think about it. When we were kids, we spent hours playing outside, climbing trees,
Mhm.
scraping our knees,
Right.
making up games. We were taking risks, failing sometimes, learning to navigate social situations on our own. All that unstructured, risky play is actually crucial for development.
Yeah.
Creativity, independence, and emotional regulation.
So you're saying by removing those opportunities for growth, we're kind of stunting their emotional development.
Right.
It's like we're bubble wrapping their childhoods, but then they get tossed into the real world without the tools to handle it.
And that's where the real danger lies.
Right.
This lack of resilience can make young people way more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and just difficulty coping with, the inevitable stresses of life.
And that's where social media comes in. Because it's not just filling the void left by a lack of unstructured play.
Yeah.
It's actively amplifying some of those anxieties and insecurities.
Absolutely. Social media throws a whole bunch of new challenges into the mix.
Haidt talks about these 4 foundational harms
Mm-hmm.
of excessive technology use. And I have to admit, reading that section was a real aha moment for me. It's like he put into words what I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate.
Yeah.
Social deprivation,
Right.
sleep deprivation,
Uh-huh.
attention fragmentation and addiction. It's all connected.
It is. And those harms are just intensified in the world of social media where algorithms are designed to keep you hooked and coming back for more.
It's scary how many teens feel addicted to their devices.
Mm.
The statistic that almost 50% of teenagers report feeling addicted is just mind-blowing.
Is a lot. Yeah.
And then there's the whole multitasking thing. We feel like we have to be plugged in 247.
Right.
But all that multitasking actually makes us less productive. Haidt says it can decrease our productivity by up to 40%.
It's true. That constant switching between tasks, the inability to focus on one thing at a time, that's what attention fragmentation is all about.
Yeah.
It impacts our ability to learn, to think deeply, to even have, meaningful conversations. And for young people whose brains are still developing, this can have long-term consequences.
It's like our brains are being rewired to crave constant stimulation. And it's making it harder to focus, to relax, even to sleep.
Yeah.
No wonder so many of us feel exhausted and overwhelmed all the time.
And it's not a level playing field either.
Right.
Social media affects girls and boys differently.
Yeah.
And understanding those nuances is crucial.
Let's dig into that in part two, because I think that's where things get really interesting and we can start to uncover some potential solutions.
Mm.
Okay, so we've talked about this rise in mental health issues among young people and the role that social media might be playing in, but it's not a one-size-fits-all situation,
Right.
right? Social media impacts girls and boys differently.
It does, and it's really important to understand those differences if we want to find effective solutions.
Right.
For girls, the pressure to conform to these unrealistic beauty standards is huge.
Hmm.
Social media is constantly bombarding them with filtered images and seemingly perfect lives.
You know, it's interesting because I remember feeling that pressure even before social media was really a thing. Like magazine covers and TV shows were always presenting this like unattainable ideal of beauty,
Mhm.
but social media takes it to a whole new level.
Right.
It's 24/7 and it's coming from all directions, friends, celebrities, even influencers they don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just the images themselves, it's the constant comparison that
Yeah.
happens. Girls are scrolling through their feeds, seeing all these seemingly perfect lives, and it's easy to start feeling inadequate. It
Right.
can really impact their self-esteem and body image.
And that can lead to some pretty serious consequences,
So.
right?
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing a direct correlation between social media use and negative body image in girls, which can contribute to eating disorders, anxiety, and depression.
Wow.
And then there's cyberbullying, which is another huge problem that disproportionately affects girls.
Right.
The anonymity of the internet can embolden bullies, and the relentless nature of online harassment can be incredibly damaging.
It's like the wounds never have a chance to heal because the attacks can just keep coming.
Exactly. And it can be hard for girls to escape it, especially if it's happening on platforms they use to connect with friends.
So we've got body image and cyberbullying as major concerns for girls.
Yeah.
What about boys?
Yeah.
What are some of the specific challenges they face when it comes to social media?
For boys, gaming culture often takes center stage.
Okay.
While online gaming can be a great way to connect with friends and develop teamwork skills, it can also become problematic when it starts to dominate their lives.
Yeah.
We see boys spending hours and hours in these virtual worlds, withdrawing from real-life activities and neglecting their responsibilities.
It's like they're living a double life.
Yeah.
They have their online persona and their offline persona, and the lines can start to blur.
And this can have a real impact on social skills development.
Right.
When boys are spending most of their time interacting in online environments, they may not be getting the same practice with face-to-face communication, empathy, and conflict resolution.
It makes me think of that scene in The Social Network where Mark Zuckerberg is so focused on building Facebook that he completely misses the cues from his girlfriend.
Right.
It's like he's lost touch with basic social etiquette because he's living in this digital bubble.
And that's a real concern. There's a risk that excessive gaming can lead to social isolation and difficulty forming meaningful relationships offline.
Okay, so we've got girls struggling with body image and cyberbullying, boys getting caught up in gaming culture and potentially missing out on real-life social skills development. It's a pretty bleak picture,
Yeah.
but surely there are things we can do about it, right?
Yeah. Like, how can we equip young people with the tools they need to navigate this digital landscape more safely and responsibly?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. There are a lot of potential solutions out there, but it's going to require a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
We need governments, tech companies, schools, parents, and young people themselves to work together.
So let's start with governments. What role can they play in protecting young people online? I mean, it seems like they're always playing catch up when it comes to technology, right?
It's true, but that doesn't mean they can't be proactive.
Okay.
There are a few key things they can do. First, they need to update existing laws,
Mm-hmm.
like CAPITA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It was a good start, but it's outdated. We need stronger protections in the age of social media and data harvesting.
It's kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
The law hasn't kept pace with the rapid advancements in technology.
Right. So updating those laws is crucial.
And then there's the question of age verification. Haidt suggests stricter requirements, maybe even using government-issued IDs to verify age to prevent kids under 13 from accessing social media platforms altogether.
I could see how that would be controversial.
Right.
People are always worried about government overreach and privacy concerns.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if it's about protecting kids from potentially harmful content and addictive algorithms,
Yeah.
maybe it's worth considering.
It's a complex issue, and there are valid arguments on both sides. The key is to have an open and honest conversation about the potential benefits and drawbacks, and that's where collaboration comes in.
Yeah.
We need policymakers, researchers, and tech companies to work together to find solutions that strike the right balance between protecting young people and respecting their privacy.
Okay, so governments have a role to play, but what about the tech companies themselves?
Yeah.
They're the ones building these platforms and designing the algorithms, right?
Mm.
Can we really expect them to prioritize kids' well-being over profits? I mean, their whole business model is based on engagement and data collection.
It's a valid concern, and it's a conversation we need to be having. Haidt argues that we need to shift the focus from engagement at all costs to ethical design.
Okay.
What if tech companies designed their platforms with user well-being in mind from the start? What if they built in safeguards to protect young people from addictive algorithms and harmful content?
I like the sound of that, but it feels kind of utopian, you know?
Yeah.
Like, are we really expecting these companies to voluntarily give up profits in the name of ethical design?
Maybe not voluntarily, but we've seen it happen before in other industries.
Right.
Think about tobacco companies.
Okay, yeah.
Public awareness campaigns, government regulations, and consumer demand force them to change their practices. The same thing could happen with tech companies.
So it's about applying pressure from multiple angles. Governments can implement regulations, consumers can demand more ethical practices, and maybe even investors could start putting pressure on these companies to prioritize social responsibility.
Exactly. It's about creating a system of accountability where tech companies are held responsible for the impact their products have on society, especially on vulnerable populations like children and teenagers.
And speaking of accountability, let's not forget the role of parents and educators.
Right.
We can't just sit back and wait for governments and tech companies to fix everything.
Yeah.
We have a huge responsibility to help young people navigate this digital world safely and responsibly.
Absolutely. Parents and educators are on the front lines,
Yeah.
and they play a crucial role in shaping young people's attitudes and behaviors around technology.
But let's be honest, it can feel overwhelming, right?
Hmm.
Like technology is changing so rapidly,
Yeah.
and it's hard to keep up.
It is challenging, but it's not impossible. The key is to stay informed and engaged.
That's where we'll pick up in part 3, because I know you're curious about the practical things parents, educators, and even young people themselves can do to foster a healthier relationship with technology. So we've explored the impact of social media on youth, you know, from those scary mental health statistics to the unique challenges faced by girls and boys. And we even touched on some potential solutions involving governments and tech companies. But I want to shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
and focus on what we can do as individuals
Right.
and families
Yeah.
to navigate this digital world more mindfully.
Absolutely.
You know, it's about empowering ourselves and the young people in our lives to make healthier choices.
You know, one of the things that really resonated with me in the anxious generation was Haidt's emphasis on personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's so easy to feel like we're at the mercy of these giant tech companies and their addictive algorithms.
Right.
But Haidt reminds us that we have agency. We have the power to make choices that align with our values and goals.
But let's be real for a second. It's not always easy to resist those temptations.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I catch myself mindlessly scrolling through social media sometimes, even when I know I should be doing something else.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of our own technology use. We need to set boundaries and create healthy habits for ourselves if we want to model those behaviors for young people.
That's like the oxygen mask on an airplane,
Yeah.
right? You have
Yeah.
to put on your own mask first before you can help others.
Exactly. So what are some practical things we can do? First, we need to be aware of our own triggers and vulnerabilities.
Okay.
What are the times of day when we're most likely to reach for our phones? What are the situations that make us feel stressed or anxious, leading us to seek comfort in the digital world? Once we identify those patterns, we can start to develop strategies for breaking them.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, maybe I realized that I always end up doom scrolling on Twitter before bed,
Right.
which messes with my sleep.
Right.
So I decide to put my phone in another room an hour before bedtime and read a book instead.
Exactly. And that leads to another important point, finding healthy alternatives. What are the activities that nourish our minds and souls? What makes us feel grounded and connected to the real world? It could be spending time in nature, pursuing a creative hobby, volunteering in our communities, or simply having meaningful conversations with the people we love.
Yeah.
Haidt calls these activities spiritual elevations, and he argues that they're crucial for counteracting the negative effects of excessive technology use.
You know, that resonates with me on a personal level. I recently started taking pottery classes, and it's been amazing. It forces me to be present in the moment. to focus on something tangible and creative,
Yeah.
and it's so much more rewarding than scrolling through my phone.
That's a great example, and it highlights another important point. It's not about rejecting technology altogether.
Right.
It's about finding a healthy balance.
Yeah.
Technology can be a powerful tool for connection learning and creativity. The key is to use it intentionally rather than letting it passively consume our lives.
So it's about making choices that align with our values,
Mm-hmm.
both individually and as families. And that might look different for everyone, right? Like some families might decide to have tech-free dinners or designate certain days of the week as screen-free days. Others might choose to limit social media use to certain times of day or focus on using technology for educational or creative purposes.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works best for your family and creating a culture of mindful technology use.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing conversation. As technology evolves, we need to adapt our approaches and keep those lines of communication open.
But it's not just about setting rules and restrictions, right? It's also about equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to navigate this digital landscape safely and responsibly. Haidt talks a lot about the importance of digital literacy.
Absolutely. Digital literacy should be a core part of education, just like reading and math.
Hmm.
It's about teaching young people how to evaluate information critically, to recognize bias, to understand how algorithms work, and to protect their privacy online.
It's about empowering them to be discerning consumers of information and responsible digital citizens. And that starts with having open and honest conversations.
Yeah.
We need to talk to young people about the potential risks and benefits of technology to help them develop critical thinking skills and to create a safe space for them to share their experiences and concerns.
And remember, it's not just about lecturing or preaching. It's about having a dialogue, listening to their perspectives, and working together to find solutions. We want them to feel empowered, not alienated.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into social media and its impact on youth, I think the key takeaway is this. It's not about demonizing technology. It's about recognizing both its potential and its pitfalls,
Mm-hmm.
and about taking proactive steps to shape a digital future that's both innovative and humane.
And it's about recognizing that we're all in this together. We all have a role to play in creating a digital world that supports the well-being of young people and future generations. It's about finding balance, setting boundaries, fostering critical thinking, and cultivating meaningful connections both online and offline.
It's a complex issue, and there are no easy answers. But by staying informed, engaged, and proactive, we can empower ourselves and the young people in our lives to navigate this digital landscape with greater awareness, resilience, and responsibility.
And that's what makes this such an important conversation to be having. It's not just about protecting young people. It's about shaping the kind of digital world we want to live in.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some food for thought and inspired you to continue exploring this fascinating and ever-evolving topic.
And remember, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.
Until next time, keep diving deep.